Since Minnesota achieved statehood in 1858, thousands of Minnesotans have served their country in the United States Armed Forces. Men and women from all over the state have served in the U.S. Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, and Merchant Marine. They served in war, on foreign battlefields, and distant oceans. They served in peacetime and established an American presence to maintain order and deter aggression. They came from all walks of life and backgrounds, ready to serve their country. Thousands more served at home and put themselves in harm's way to protect our safety and security. The men and women in law enforcement, firefighting, and emergency medical services. People in the medical fields devoted their talents to conducting research and serving the sick and wounded. Sadly, many brave men and women did not return from overseas. Others died in the line of duty while serving on the home front. Many of the veterans who survived are no longer with us and rest in quiet fields with their comrades in arms. Today, many of our veterans are entering the twilight years of their lives. And when they are gone, we will no longer be able to hear their stories or learn from their service unless we preserve those memories. The Minnesota Veterans and Emergency Services Museum will be the first museum of its kind in the United States dedicated to honoring military, law enforcement, and emergency service providers. The museum will tell the stories of military and civilian service throughout Minnesota history. The Minnesota Veterans and Emergency Services Museum will display artifacts that are reminders of our past because they tell the stories of the people who used them. They teach us about social and technological change. They are the tools and symbols of peace, order, justice, security, and safety in the world and in our communities. The artifacts are a physical link to the past, but the museum is about people. The museum will tell the stories through the use of life-size dioramas and mannequins dressed in period uniforms using authentic equipment set in the representative environments in which they lived and fought and died. Visitors to the museum will get a real sense of the challenges our veterans faced and the sacrifices they made. Since the museum is dedicated to preservation and education, the museum library will maintain a collection of books, papers, and audiovisual materials that document human service and sacrifice. It will include audio and video recordings of veterans in national defense and homeland security. The Minnesota Veterans and Emergency Services Museum building will offer meeting places for visitors, the local community, and groups from around the region and nation. A conference room will be available for museum staff meetings, volunteers, patrons, visitors, and supporters. Classrooms will be used by museum staff and local educators to plan field trips, teach classes about Minnesota and regional history, and for students and scholars to conduct research. A multi-purpose room will be configured to host audiences for lectures and seminars. There will be room for tables and displays where groups can meet for conferences and symposiums. An auditorium will serve as a place for entertainment and education. Concerts will feature period music. Plays will present the stories of our veterans in dramatic fashion. And motion pictures and lectures by historians and authors will be featured on stage. The auditorium will also be used for ceremonies and dedications during inclement weather. A catered restaurant will serve museum visitors and be open to the public. This facility will be available for rent for special occasions and serve as a source of revenue. A snack bar will be available. A gift shop will offer books, DVDs, clothing, and other souvenirs. A workshop will be the place where artifacts can be restored and brought back to their original condition, and where experts in preservation will ensure that documents, uniforms, and other artifacts are cared for and preserved for future generations. A non-denominational multi-faith sanctuary will serve as a space for quiet reflection and an opportunity to remember the individuals who gave their lives in service to our nation. The Minnesota Veterans and Emergency Services Museum will not be constrained by physical walls. Outside the facility, visitors can experience the beauty of nature in a peace garden, a place of quiet serenity in stark contrast to the dangerous, violent environments endured by military and emergency service veterans. Outdoor displays will feature vehicles, aircraft, watercraft, artillery, and other items too large for the museum building. Outdoor memorials to fallen heroes will provide places for remembrance and ceremonies. The museum staff and facilities will work closely with living history groups to keep the stories of our veterans and historical figures alive. The museum will operate an outdoor facility for use by reenactment groups from around the nation. The museum will sponsor field trips throughout Minnesota and adjacent areas so visitors can learn more about the history of the state and experience the sites where that history occurred. As our veterans age and their memories fade, and more of our existing documents and artifacts fall victim to neglect and loss, it is critical that we collect the stories of our heroes, the men and women who sacrificed and served in our military, police, fire, and emergency medical services. They deserve to be recognized and remembered by us and future generations. Our mission is to honor the men, women, and institutions that protect our way of life, and to interpret and preserve their histories.